Today's episode, as most of you know, I want to talk about the new running back coach at Penn State, Stan Drayton. He's got 32 years of coaching experience, with 25 of them being running backs. I want to touch on a couple notable stops. His first season at Ohio State as running backs coach in 2012, he guided the Buckeyes to 1,536 rushing yards, 21 touchdowns, and they averaged 4.5 yards per carry. During the year, they went 12-0. One of those running backs was Carlos Hyde. Carlos Hyde was the Big Ten's running back of the year, rushed for 1,500 yards, 8th most in school history, 7.3 yards per carry. Pretty good stuff. Fast forward to 2014. Another great running back at Ohio State that we're all too familiar with, Ezekiel Elliott. Everyone, welcome back to another episode of Road to Happy Valley. I'm your host, Noah Malone. Today's episode, as most of you know, I want to talk about the new running back coach at Penn State. Obviously, not too long ago, Juwan Sider headed to Notre Dame, and shortly after that, Penn State announced their new running back coach, Stan Drayton. So before I get into any of that, I wanted to talk about what our mentality as just fans, anybody that supports the program, should be moving forward when it comes to coaches, players, anything like that in what is considered like the new era of football. So what I mean by that is we have gotten to a point where it feels like any coach can leave any university, any program at any time, and there not really be any warning signs until the deal already happens. So what I mean by that is, like, we went out there and we pretty much got Jim Knowles from Ohio State, and that wasn't on a lot of people's expectations. That wasn't on a lot of people's radar for Penn State to go out there and bring in a guy like that. I don't think it was on anybody's radar, anybody's expectations for us to lose Juwan Sider. So I think that we have to sort of change our mindset as far as where we look at coaches and players, because anything can happen at this point. It really feels that way. It really feels like no matter how good of a job they've done for you as a head coach, as a running back coach, anything, defensive coordinator, like, it feels like they can be gone at the blink of a hat. And we've kind of seen that happen these last few months with us, especially, and bringing in Knowles and now losing Sider. So I want to wish, like, the best of luck to Coach Sider. He's done a great job at Penn State, brought in some very talented running backs. It sucks that it had to happen to Notre Dame. Team ended our season, but nothing but the best to him. New running back coach Stan Drayton. Let's get into some background on him. So to start off, he's got 32 years of coaching experience, with 25 of them being running backs. He did play running back in college. He went to Allegheny College. He was a 3-time first-team All-American, and he did win a D3 national championship and is in their athletic Hall of Fame. So he has that track record of being a successful running back. Albeit D3 level, still hard to win a national championship, still hard to be a really good player no matter what level you're at. Into the coaching realm, I want to touch on a couple notable stops that he's had along the way. So first off was Villanova, where he was the running back coach from 1996 to 2000. You'll understand down the road here the significance of that stop. So I'll save that for then. In 2005 to 2007, he went to Florida and he was the running back coach. During those years, offensive line coach Phil Troutwine was on the Florida team. So Drayton was coaching, Troutwine was on the offensive line those years that he was he was a running back coach at Florida. Like I said, 05 to 07, and then he came back to Florida again in 2010. After that, he ended up going to Ohio State, where he was the running back coach from 2012 to 2014. Went on to coach the running backs for the Chicago Bears at the NFL level in 2015 to 2016. Came back to college, where he coached at Texas from 2017 to 2021. And then most recently, he was the head coach at Temple in my backyard. I'll be honest with you guys. Temple football hasn't been great in a long time. In a handful of years, pretty much since the Manti Te'o era. So I was not really familiar with him. You don't really hear a lot about Temple football, even living in Philly. So I didn't really have a lot of information on Coach Drayton, but I'm glad I had the opportunity to go in there and do some background information and see where he's been throughout his coaching career. All right. Notable players and accomplishments. This is where I think it starts to get pretty impressive. So he did coach Brian Westbrook at Villanova. That's what I was alluding to earlier. Westbrook was a two-time All-American and was the first collegiate player to have 1,000 rushing yards and 1,000 receiving yards in the same season. Next was in 06 at Florida, where they averaged 160 rushing yards per game, and they won a national championship. I think that his best moments as a running back coach came when he made it to Ohio State in 2012. So I think it's also worth noting he was at Ohio State in 2011, but was the wide receiver coach. He took over as running back coach in 2012. And of course, he ended up having just two phenomenal college running backs while he was the coach there. So his first season at Ohio State as running backs coach in 2012, he guided the Buckeyes to 1,536 rushing yards, 21 touchdowns, and averaged 4.5 yards per carry. During the year, they went 12-0. One of those running backs was Carlos Hyde. Carlos Hyde was the Big Ten's running back of the year, rushed for 1,500 yards, eighth most in school history, 7.3 yards per carry. Pretty good stuff. 2013, Carlos Hyde finished with 1,500 yards again, 15 touchdowns, eighth in the nation in rushing, averaged 126.8 yards per game at Ohio State. Fast forward to 2014, another great running back at Ohio State that we're all too familiar with, Ezekiel Elliott. In 2014, Drayton coached Ezekiel Elliott, to 3 straight 200-yard rushing games, which is tied for the most in a single season school history behind Eddie George, pretty good player. Ezekiel Elliott was named the offensive MVP of the national championship that year. He had 246 rushing yards in the national championship game, which was third most in school history for a single game. Had 4 touchdowns and 36 carries against Oregon that year, which was that game was just nuts. Ezekiel Elliott was actually all over the field. Was named offensive MVP of the Sugar Bowl, where he rushed for 230 yards, 2 touchdowns on 20 carries versus Alabama in the semifinals. So some pretty successful years for Coach Drayton at Ohio State. In 2014, still, when Ezekiel Elliott was a sophomore, he finished third in the nation and second in single-season school history rushing yards with 1,878. Listen, I know that Carlos Hyde and Ezekiel Elliott were both great college running backs, but having a great college running back coach makes all the difference too. I'm sure both of those guys would have gone on to have very successful college careers regardless, because they were just extremely talented. But having a good head coach is what takes those guys to that next level. And we clearly saw that happen those years that Coach Drayton was at Ohio State. All right, on to 2015. That's when he took over as the running back coach for the Chicago Bears. Led them to the 11th best rushing yards per game in the NFL that season, which was 16 spots better than the previous year. So quite an improvement for the Bears rushing game the second that Drayton stepped in. Definitely important to me that you can have success college level. Well, first off, as a player, he was a good running back. And then for him to do that in the NFL and then at the college level, he's had success all along the way. Back to 2015. 2016. 2016, he coached Jordan Howard to the single season rookie rushing record with 1,313 yards. And then in 2018, he came back to college where he went to Texas. Eventually coached Bijan Robinson in 2020, 2021, where in his 2021 season, Bijan Robinson was third in the Big 12 for rushing and was first all Big 12 honors, went on to be the 8th pick in the 2023 draft by the Atlanta Falcons. And then after that is when he went to be the Temple coach, didn't work out at Temple, and now he finds himself as the running back coach at Penn State. I said this earlier, but I think it's important that he won national championships while being a head coach. I think that being in that scenario, having the experience, knowing what it takes to play on a national championship team is extremely important, brings a ton of value to this running back room, to Penn State as a whole. I don't think there's ever an instance where you can have too many guys who won a national championship on your coaching staff, and I think that brings a lot of value. He's also been a coach of a lot of really good running backs on some really good teams. I mean, Carlos Hyde was great. Ezekiel Elliott was great. Bijan Robinson was great. Jordan Howard had a long NFL career. Like, those are some really significant names. Obviously, Bijan's still playing today. Ezekiel Elliott's still playing today, although on the back end of his career, but still played at a really high level for a lot of years in the NFL for Dallas. And then I also think it's important to note that he can do it and have success at the NFL level. NFL is different from college, as we know, as far as how guys respond. And if you're able to translate a message to a guy in the NFL, as well as in college, I just think that makes things so much easier for you as a head coach. And being able to bring that experience into a running back room with Katron Allen and Nick Singleton, and then all the other young guys that are still there now and moving forward, that's so valuable. And I think that goes a long way to having a successful running back room, successful run game, everything along those lines. Like I said, I didn't really know about Coach Drayton prior to him coming to Penn State, but I really like the hire. I think the fact that they brought him in here within 6 days is pretty significant. They didn't waste any time. Normally it takes around like 10 days for the hiring process as far as bringing somebody in there, but it kind of seemed like they had their eye on somebody when they got the hint that Sider was going to be leaving. So I think that's significant. They didn't waste any time. And ultimately, I don't think it would have necessarily mattered as much for the guys that are in there right now, like Katron, like Singleton. I think bringing in a guy like this is going to pay dividends down the road when it comes to going and meeting with these running backs, meeting with national talents, national guys. Like, he has the hardware, he has the experience of success. Like, that goes a long way too when you're trying to get a kid to come to your school and along the recruiting trail. So I'm excited to see how this plays out. I think that it will end up working. I'm interested to see what you guys think. Any thoughts on Stan Drayton? Please reach out to me. I'm always down to hear about him. But yeah, I like where we're headed in this running back room, and I think Stan Drayton Coach Drayton's going to be a great addition. So I'm really looking forward to it. That's going to do it for today. Really appreciate everybody tuning in. We are.